Okay, so let me sum up real quick. So you're an OT, an occupational therapist, who is a body function conscious. You work with Brad Gortz?
Yeah,
Gertz, and you learn the trade of woodworking and start to build your first ever guitar. You hook up with Dion James's firm, his amazing guitar company, and learn to build some more from him. And then Max reaches out to you, and he's got a hint about this vibrato system. He's intrigued with this vibrato system for you. So maybe we could just be in wonder and awe about how you managed to find these people along your path, first of all. And then second of all, I want to introduce our first special guest to this episode. We have Max Heidemann in the crowd. I wonder if, Ted, you could pin or something so we can see Leila and Max together, which is the first closest they've maybe ever been.
Oh, wow, maybe.
Because as I hear it, you guys designed this internationally.
Yes, that's right.
How do we do this? How did you do that?
I think we probably didn't thought it through well enough before we started. Exactly. It was just kind of a, hey, let's go for it kind of situation.
So when you messaged Leila right away, did you have something in mind that you would propose to her, or were you going to find out as you go with
honestly, her? Honestly, not really. I think I felt, or maybe I should start by saying, I have always admired Leila's work ever since I was using Instagram, and I pretty much one of the earliest builders I started following as soon as I downloaded the app, because I was just intrigued by these amazing, beautiful instruments and her craftsmanship, which she was really she made it show through Instagram, how meticulously everything is put together. And I was totally in love with that. So of course, I kind of saw my chance to maybe for a little bit of a collaboration, maybe helping out by doing, at first I thought this would be a quick little thing. I would probably do some calculations and send them to her and have a chat about guitars or something and be done in a day. But it turned out to be much more involved.
Where did you go from there? So Leila, did you have expectations of the Trem system or expectations of Max right away? How do you build a collaborative relationship that comes up with such an amazing design?
Honestly, I think Max and my relationship is really a perfect example. And I will say that I have, that there are more in my building life that I could kind of call on, like my relationship with Dion or my relationship with Aaron, who I design kind of guitar shapes with, even my relationship with Tom Dahlia, all this stuff. It's there's a common thing that we want to work on, but it never sort of starts in this in this way where we're setting a goal. I feel like what happens is that we become friends, and it's the thing that, it's we happen to be working on something together, but I think the thing that is the most motivating for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, is the kind of inevitable friendship that happens out of something like that. And I think, I've never met Max in person, but he's such a dear friend to me. We talk multiple times a week, very rarely now, about guitars. And it's just it's so, to me, sometimes it doesn't even, of course I'm going to visit, I'm going to go and visit, and I hope Max comes to visit me, but I don't even feel kind of a lack of connection because we're not in the same place. I still feel very kind of connected to Max. And yeah, we started talking about the system in 2019, and it became a thing for the first time at the end of 2021, or yeah, the end of 2021. So it was, we're working on it part-time, both of us, but I don't think that momentum we couldn't have kept that momentum up for a thing that we didn't even know would work if we weren't motivated by something other than, or if we weren't motivated by friendship and connection and sort of like getting along.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what ended up happening with this system was that my friend Erin and I were talking, and I forget exactly how it happened. Like, I don't know if he came up with this idea or if I did, or if it was something that sort of came out of a conversation, but something that came out of the conversation was this idea of, Aaron's a really proficient guitar player, and he was always like, yeah, I don't really use trems very much because I find it awkward to have to reach around and grab the bar every time I want to use it. And me as an OT, I was thinking, yeah, like they look awkward to me, but I'm not a guitar player, so I can't really say. But I was just thinking, like, well, wouldn't it be cool if you didn't have to actually change your natural playing position, but could just sort of like actuate it somehow that, with your palm or something like that in a way that your hands could just stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
And when Max and I started talking, I just said that to him, like just this idea. And this was like the starting of kind of like really coming up with something material.
That's so great. So what I'm taking from that is that you kind of felt out Max first as being someone who would be a good friend to you to talk to, and then developed this working relationship and this design together in a way that really enriched both the design and your friendship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say that I sort of like felt out Max for, is he going to be my friend necessarily, but I think if we didn't become friends, this project probably would have fizzled out.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree, Max? I don't know. What do you think?
I totally agree. Yes. So what you said, when we first got talking, the idea for the general concept of a vibrato system that you actuate with the palm of your hand while playing, this was there from like second one. This was like what you approached me with. But I think this kind of like feeling out aspect, to me it was more when you want to get potentially a new product to the market, and especially a market that's already pretty saturated with lots of different designs. You have to approach it from a different angle, because you're not only asking what do I want from the new system on a technical level. Of course, I wanted like tuning stability and ease of use and ease of string change and whatever. But you have to ask those more philosophical questions, like um, what do I want to give the player that maybe the player wouldn't get from another system, or how do I want to enrich the experience of interacting with the thing? And this, of course, led us down this massive rabbit hole of discussing like all the interactions with the instrument and all the like meta and esoterica stuff and everything you can think about. So I think yeah, this was just a starting point. Before we got into any technical details, we really tried to feel out how we feel about new guitar parts and hardware and handling them and what we actually want, So this was like the first real big thing for us, to approach at like this kind of shared idea, and then we can start making sketches and designs and drawings.
I see. Max, you've been so generous on your Instagram. You've done a couple great like exposés of the design and the process of designing it. I really appreciate that. If you haven't already, everyone should definitely go check out Max's posts from earlier in the year, because he really went into detail about it. And Leila, I know you've talked about this, like you guys were really pushing the PR on this on this design. You've definitely had a good marketing rollout. Was that by design? Like you really had your interviews lined up and your product ready to go. How does one do that? You've built 20 guitars. How did you know to drop this hardware and have these interviews lined up at the same time?
I mean, some of it was accidental, to be honest. Like, there was an interview with Premier Guitar, and they had reached out to me totally not knowing that this vibrato was almost ready. It was just like really good timing. So that was,
Oh,
yeah, so that was just like super handy.
yeah.
And and then knowing that, we just decided, you know, we released the vibrato system after the first vibrato guitar had actually reached its first home, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to delay sending that guitar out to my customer just to get things kind of ready. But I also, yeah, I had talked to a couple of other guitar builders about the vibrato system. They were pretty excited. And like Lenny from Daddy Mojo Instruments was like, you know, gave me some advice around how I might want to kind of like release it. So I took his advice. Um, and yeah, like I wrote about it. I wrote a little, you know, press release and sent it out to some places. So some people kind of like picked it up, but it was, I knew that people would want to hear it rather than just see it, because it's just it's like an unusual system compared to what you are used to seeing on a guitar. So my friend Erin put together like a demo video, and my friend Cass came by and played some examples that same day. And so Erin kind of edited that up. And then I also wanted, like, Max and I had also talked about how we wanted to talk about our collaboration and sort of share this with people as well. So we recorded, just kind of a little conversation between the two of us and put that on YouTube as well, and just tried to line up all the timing. But the timing was a little bit, how do you call it? Like, it was just all based on like all these little pieces coming together and when they were going to be ready, and then it was just like it just dropped all at once.
Like the avalanche.
Yeah.
Ian just asked, what I've kind of been thinking is, we've talked a lot about it. Can we please see it?
Yeah, sure. So I have a guitar with one right here. So this is my first two pickup guitar here, but this is the vibrato system. So it's palm actuated. It's made of stainless steel parts and then some custom brass parts that one of this community's members made. Jamie Roadman made these brass blocks. What else can I show you?
Where's the spring in it?
The spring is underneath here. The spring is underneath this screw here.
So the trem system is recessed into the body a little bit?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. So there's, so it's a floating system, as you can see here. And there's like a kind of on the fly, and the strings attached.
Through, yep.
And then there's a locking system where you just sort of like turn it a quarter turn and move it out, and then the trem system is actuated, like it's active. So you're just sort of like playing, and you can just sort of like press it down with your arm or with your palm.
Yeah.
And then you can on the fly also just like lock it up, like undo this, push it back in, and lock it to turn it into a hardtail if you want to. And then the I guess maybe I'll ask Max if you want to talk about like the sort of pivoting system, like the cup and cone system.
Yeah, sure. I think I should. How do I start? It's such a long journey of designing this thing over many months and many iterations. So the very first thing we put out in the wild was actually our internal like version number 7.2 or something. So there was quite a lot of iteration going on before this even happened, what we have on the guitars now. The main focus in designing this for me was I wanted to keep in with, of course, the design aesthetic of Leila's guitars, but mostly with the handmade aspect of her instruments. Like all those amazing, beautiful brass parts you see on her guitars, they're not CNC cut or anything. She's making them completely by hand with like sawing, filing, sanding, the whole business.
Mhm.
So the initial idea, and maybe it was a very ambitious idea, but initially we wanted to design a system that Leila would be able to make by hand entirely. And I think if you look at the result now, you can still see some traces, like a person who would was like much in like 3D printing, CNC machining all day long. They would probably design something that looks a little bit more streamlined in certain areas, whereas on ours you can see like we initially left these brass parts very like rectangular, so it would be possible and quite easy to like saw them off by hand, drill them, file them, and this leads, of course, to the main factor that determines how well a vibrato works, and this is like the bearing edge or the fulcrum point or whatever you want to call it, because you will always have a stationary part and a moving part, and they have to mechanically interface at some point. And naturally, you want like the least amount of friction there. So there's a few possibilities of how to do it. Some of them are less friendly to be made by hand, and some of them a little bit more. And in the end, we went with the knife edge style approach. But instead of filing or trying to hand file a precise knife edge, which would be like not impossible, but very hard, and especially if we want to make multiple of the unit, so I wouldn't want to do it myself. So we ended up using a system where you have pretty much like set screws or grub screws that are sharpened to the point, to a very sharp point, and two of them going into like recessed counterparts. And this has like a few advantages in our case. First of all, it's a part that's pretty easy to make by hand. Then it's a part that you can change it if it ever wears out. You can do that with a knife edge.
Excellent.
And also you have some adjustability because those parts are threaded. So you can actually adjust the alignment of the system. And we have like two of those points. So this is the least amount of friction possible, pretty much, in our opinion. And for the brass parts and the rest, yeah, in the end, like Leila pointed out, we went with machined parts. But initially, and still, you would be able to make every part of that by hand if you wanted to.
So some of it isn't, but some of it is made by the hands of James Roadman. Before we introduce our final special guest to this episode, I wonder if you could tell me what the process is that gets the machined parts that James doesn't do into Leila's hands. Who does that? What are they made of? Where do they come from?
Oh, so these parts here, the stainless steel parts are, they're made by, like, Max made the drawings, and then I got them sort of cut and bent by a local metal shop here. They're stainless steel parts. And then
awesome.
And then the palm piece I make out of like a piece of the neck wood for every guitar.
I like how that's tied in. All right, let's introduce our final guest, Jamie Roadman. You guys know him. You guys love him. He's our resident machinist and guitar tech. So Jamie's in the States and Leila's in Canada and Max is in Germany. These guys have never met face to face, but boy, did they ever create something beautiful. Can we have Jamie Roadman on the screen.
Hello.
Hey, Jamie.
How are you?
Good. You're part of an illustrious team on this Tremolo project. Tell us about your contribution to it. When did you get invited into the fold, and how did that feel?
Well, I got an email from Leila with just seeing if I'd be willing to make some parts, and then she sent along some CAD drawings that Max had made. So there really wasn't much for me to do other than follow the drawings. The drawings were very comprehensive and had all the information that I needed. All my machines are manual, so the fact that everything was fairly rectangular made it much easier for me to produce.
Right. It kind of plays into the whole handmade bit too, eh?
Yeah.
Leila, how did you find Jamie?
So Max and I had been talking about making this, the plan was for me to make these brass parts in the shop, but of course they needed to be really accurate. And I mean, brass work, when, it's like, it's a really conductive material. You sand it for 5 seconds and your hands are on fire. Like, it's not easy to work with in some ways. And in other ways, it's super easy to work with because it's soft enough. But Max had sort of said, like, hey, Leila, would you consider reaching out to a couple of people on the internet? I wonder if, there's some machinists and things like that within the luthier community. I wonder if you'd, he sent along somebody's name that I actually can't think of right now. And I reached out to that person, and that person was a little bit concerned about just how to do this kind of work across borders.
Yeah.
It was like, maybe reach out to these other people. So Jamie was one of the people that I reached out to, and he had something going on, like timeline wise, that I forget what it was exactly, but he sort of said, like, well, I'd like to make you I'd like to just try it and make sure that it's, make sure that I feel good about it. And then if everything looks good, I can make you the set. But there was a particular timeline we were working in, like he had something to do. And anyway, he just in like a day made the first set of these 2 blocks, and they looked amazing, like in the photograph. And I was like, yes, like just yes, like please make 10, and so I like, even before this period of time where he was going to be away, he made them so quickly, so accurately, and then popped them in first class, USPS mail,
Which is always super reliable.
Lost or something. And they were just stuck in the mail system for weeks. It was such a nightmare, I think, for both of us in a way, just wondering, like, what's happened. But they did arrive, and those are the string blocks I'm using right now. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, seeing the accuracy of what Jamie was able to do. I mean, they're such beautiful pieces of work. I ended up sort of reaching out to him to be like, would you actually consider making the other brass stuff that I'm doing in my shop? Because it's so much nicer to use, and it's going to save my fingers, So we ended up kind of expanding our relationship based on these string blocks.